Good to see you.
Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. And today because we finished up Bahar yesterday, or the last time we met, we are going to be going into Torah Temimah and picking up from back in Genesis. And the last time we had met together, what to discuss this was the 7 Noahide laws, and we began to read about them. So, what are the 7 Noahide laws? They have to do, here we are, let me see if I have them, okay. The requirement to adjudicate cases, blaspheming, idolatry, sexual immorality, bloodshed, murder, theft, and eating the limb of a living animal, i.e., cruelty to animals. And we had discussed the fact that this verse that we used to get those 7 Noahide laws is a mnemonic device. That's what it is. And we had other examples of this. So let's take a look at where we are on this. We are actually down here. So we're still continuing with Torah Temimah's explanation of this particular section. V'hinei benogel lefaret mitzvot dinim. He says, with regards to specifying or looking more specifically into the mitzvah of dinim, right? The laws or adjudicating cases. Dat HaRambam, the opinion of Maimonides, Perek Tet in chapter 9, Halacha Yud Daled, the 14th subparagraph, chapter 9, paragraph 14, Mimelachim, his laws of kings, Beferush mitzvah zo, in his explanation of this particular mitzvah. What is it? Lohashiv dayanim, to set up judges, ladun, to judge and adjudicate b'sheish mitzvot shelahem, in the other 6 mitzvot. The Ramban and Nachmanides, benimukav, in his penetrating analysis, Parshat Vayishlach, he has this deep analysis of the Torah, and in the Parsha of Vayishlach, that's Genesis chapter 34, in verse 13, Piresh, he explains, the ikar mitzvah zo, that the very basis of this mitzvah, hem kiyum dinim pratim, that has to do with the preservation of specific laws. In other words, that they need to preserve. This is the nations of the world, right? Everyone, humanity. Kamo, what are such laws? Gneva. So, for example, theft. The ona'ah. Ona'ah is overreaching, like when you charge an unfair profit or you don't pay a fair price for an object or for services. The oshek schar schachir, and one who withholds the payment due to a laborer. The dinei hashomrim, and laws regarding those who are guarding. In other words, people who are, a shomer is a watchman, but we're talking about, for example, somebody responsible for your property, right? And who you've hired or asked to take care of your property. And it could be animals, it could be real estate, it could be anything. The ones, has to do with rape, mefateh, seduction, seducer, for avot nezikin, and the basic principles of the primary principles of the laws of damages. There are 4 basic types of damage: the chovel b'chavero, and one who injures his fellow; the dinei milva velove, laws regarding loans, and the one who lends and one who loans; umekach omemkar, business laws, right, in meaning buying and selling, ukuyotze bahem, and similar kinds of things. Vechulam pratim mefuradim, and all of these would be specific cases. tachat shem klali, under the general heading of echad dinim, laws. Umimela, and consequently, tzrichim lehoshiv dayanim, one has to appoint judges, ladun bechol ela, in order to adjudicate all these cases. Ve'ien ma shekatavnu bazeh mi parshei harambam, I believe, or it could be, and look at what he wrote. It could be he wrote or we wrote regarding this. Mifarshei, oh no, sorry, Mashikatvu, and look at what those Mefarshei Harambam, the Maimonides in his code of law, has any number of interpreters and commentators on that, and he's saying, look at what they wrote regarding this. V'tzarich biur ladat harambam, and according to the Nachmanides, we need to clarify lama chashvu chazal, why did our sages of blessed memory enumerate mitzvat gezel, specify the command of theft, beyichud, specifically. In other words, one of those 7 laws is, in fact, the law of theft, but in fact, right, v'lo kalaluha, and they didn't include theft, bichlal mitzvah dinim. They didn't include it in the general category of laws. After all, theft is one of those types of things that we could consider to be the areas of civil law. Okay. Ukitzat, not just that, but law in general, right, the legal system. Uktzat yesh lahashiv, and one might be able to respond to this al pi ma shekatuv besugyat Sanhedrin, based on what's written in a passage in Sanhedrin, that Nun Tet, page 59, the A side of the page. Here we are. This is what they wrote there. Nochri she'osek b'Torah, a non-Jew who studies Torah, chayav mita, is in fact committing a capital offense. A very, troublesome statement, I would say, on the surface, right? Dichtiv, and the explanation is Torah tziva lanu Moshe, because in the end of Deuteronomy, it says Torah tziva lanu Moshe, Moses commanded us the Torah, morasha, etc. It is an inheritance. I believe, Elohei Yaakov. It is an inheritance of the God of Jacob. And the point is, he tziva lanu, he commanded us, lanu morasha, it's our inheritance, velo lahem, it is not the other nations' inheritance. Uprich lama lo chashiv ze b'mitzvat shenitzvah meinei. And so the question is, of course, why was not this included? Why not this particular law wasn't included in those laws that were commanded the sons of Noah? Umashni, and it states there, it teaches Hakatani Gazal. He says, no, wait, it is mentioned because it is specific, because theft is mentioned. Klomar, that is to say, the gam zehu min gezel, that in fact this is a kind of theft, that is, taking the Torah for themselves is a kind of theft. Shegozel haschut hanitan liIsrael, because they are stealing the merit that was given to the Jewish people. So just a little bit of editorializing here, the idea that the ability to study Torah actually is an inheritance, that it is a gift, that it is something by which the Jewish people are able to gain merit. And we know that the merit, of course, is immortality. That's one of the merits. There are many other positive merits that are included in the study of Torah, but that the study of Torah per se. Harei mevu'ar, but since it is clear that gezel shayach, we now realize that the idea of theft, shayach bedevar ruchani, it isn't just stealing physical property, it also requires spiritual, it also refers to spiritual property, non-material things. The law rak bedevar manon, and it doesn't only apply, theft doesn't apply only to something that has financial value or monetary value. V'lachein nekat gezel beichud. And for this reason, gezel is mentioned specifically and isn't just implied by Dinim. V'yein lekaman, and see below Parshat Vayera, in the Parsha of Vayera. I think it looks like Yud Chet. This is chapter 18 in Genesis, verse 19, but pasuk regarding the verse that says Ki Yedativ. This is right before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, where God reveals to Abraham what he's about to do, and before he does it, there's this sort of statement beforehand that God says, "I know him," but where he says that he knows Abraham is one who is devoted to making sure that the generations following him will be involved in righteousness and justice. Hevenu ra'aya, we brought a proof, ladat harambam, for the proof given by Maimonides, Ye'uyan Sham. Check it out over there. So I think I need to comment a little bit about that very troublesome statement that is made by Chazal, right? And I think part of sometimes we have to understand that the sages, this is not the first time, but they speak hyperbolically because they want to make a point, and not that anybody, I don't believe any non-Jew has ever, it only says they're deserving of it. It doesn't say that it should actually be a punishment administered by a court, and I don't believe it ever was done. I think the idea is that studying Torah is there as a reflection and as a response to belief in one God. So when it says a non-Jew, it's talking essentially about someone who is only studying mitzvot, in this case, for academic purposes, and without any intention of ever practicing the Torah. And you know that what we do in this class, and certainly what I try to do, is to struggle with it, to wrestle with it, and to see if there are ways in which to apply it in our lives. That's the point. And that, of course, is, I like to describe that based on, of course, metaphors given in the Bible itself, of taking the commandments down from Mount Sinai and bringing them down to earth. That is such an essential part. And I think that's simply the point they're trying to make, that if you aren't willing to commit yourself to making Shem, that is the Lord your God, right? When we say Shema Yisrael and Kira Israel, the Lord is our God, is a way of understanding and trying to reflect that belief in our lives. And I think that's basically the point that's being made. It isn't supposed to necessarily be taken as an insulting kind of comment, although clearly on the surface it feels that way. But I think that that's the problem with hyperbole, is it can be misunderstood and misapplied. And that's what I think it's trying to say. And in that case, it certainly applies to me, that when I study Torah, it can't just be for academic purposes. I really need to wrestle with it, and as I said, and try to think about how does this apply to my life. Omnam, however, yesh lahavi ktsat smuchim ledat Ramban. However, it is also appropriate to bring some support for the Ramban's opinion. Now, what the Torah Temimah is clearly saying here is that the Rambam has one position, which is the idea of preserving, right? Let's see. He's saying that it is the idea of setting up the ability to adjudicate these laws in general. In other words, set up. Let me see. Right, that the law of Dinim has the idea of setting up courts, whereas the Ramban says that it has to do with it's simply a general statement regarding specific laws, and the idea of setting up courts is simply an automatic consequence of it. So he is trying to say that there's a difference of opinion between the Rambam and the Ramban. And here he's saying that it's also possible to support the Ramban, Nachmanides. Mima shekatuv b'chulin tzadik bet aleph, from what is written in the tractate Chulin, page 92 on the A side of the page. Divnei Noach mitzuvim, that in fact there it says that the sons of Noah, in other words, humanity, non-Jews, are also commanded al shloshim mitzvot, regarding 30 mitzvahs. Well, we just read 7, and now all of a sudden we're reading about 30 mitzvahs. Ufiresh Rashi lo itparesh hecha. And Rashi says, this isn't clear. Rashi in his commentary says it's not this requires clarification. This isn't so clear. Uladat Ramban, but if you hold on to the Ramban's position, yesh lomar, you could say, in other words, if we understand dinim to mean these various specific laws, right? Al pi ma shekatav b'Baba Kama dalet bet, based on what is written in the tractate Baba Kama, page 4b, Tana Rabbi Chia taught, this is a quote now from the Gemara there in Baba Kama, Esrim v'arba'a avot nesikin. He says there are in fact 24 basic principal categories of damages. V'chashiv sham kol pratei hasikut, and there in Baba Kama they actually specify and enumerate all the specific hezekot, all the types of damage shebedinei mamonot, that come under the category of monetary cases that would require some kind of compensation, financial compensation. Kamo ele shechashiv harambam, just like those that the Rambam specified, kamo shehevenu, just as we mentioned right above. Ulefi zeh, now according to this, tzeh v'chashuv, we can go and calculate shesh mitzvot hachashuvot lefanenu, the 6 mitzvahs, these 6 very important and specified mitzvahs that we mentioned, levad mitzvah dinim, not counting the commandment of dinim that we're calling dinim, Ve'esrim v'arba mitzvot pratiot, and then 24 specific mitzvahs, haklulot b'mitzvat klalit achat, that would be included in one general mitzvah, dinim, that are dinim. All right, so you've got those 6 that were specified, and you've got dinim. And by understanding dinim as those 24 that were just mentioned, harei shloshim mitzvot. Here we get 30 mitzvahs, and there's no need to discuss this any further as far as this is concerned. It's clear enough. Umitzvat birkat Hashem. But let's take a look now, he says, at the mitzvah regarding, this is actually a euphemism. Birkat Hashem means cursing the name of God, blasphemy. Nireh, that it appears dahainu rak hilul Hashem, that when it's talking about this, it's just talking about desecrating God's name. Kagon, for example, mecharef, that is reviling, umegadef, and reproaching God, right? Blaspheming. Aval ein bichlal zeh, but we do not include in this idea gam kiddush Hashem, the notion of actually positively sanctifying God's name. And I believe, I'm not sure, when we talk about Kiddush Hashem, we talk about martyrdom. But we could just simply say Kiddush Hashem, like when we make our brachot, when we say our blessings and our benedictions, she'ein b'nei Noach mitzuvim al zeh, that we have to say that the sons of Noah are not commanded regarding this, Sanhedrin, as is explained in Sanhedrin, the tractate Sanhedrin, Ayin Gimel Bet, page 73b. Uma shechatru sham limtzor makor leftor zeh, and where the people who either in the Gemara or subsequent commentators made an attempt, they tried very hard to find a source for this particular explanation. Hine Yerushalmi, we appear that in the Talmud Yerushalmi, Bishvi'it, in the tractate Shvi'it, 7th year produce, Perek Daled, chapter 4, Halacha Gimel, law 3, Huva Makor Ne'eman, there appears to be a very reliable source. Mi dichtiv be'inyan kiddush Hashem, because it says regarding the need to sanctify God's name, V'nikdashti betoch b'nei Yisrael, and I shall be sanctified in the midst of the children of Israel. Parshat Emor, that's a quote from Parshat Emor in the book of Leviticus. V'darshina, and from this basis, because it says, I shall be sanctified amongst the children of Israel, so we interpret B'nei Yisrael mitzuvim. So we say that the children of Israel are so commanded, V'ein ovdei kochavim mitzuvim. But those who worship idols are not commanded al kiddush Hashem, with the need to sanctify God's name. Just as long as they don't outrightly blaspheme or revile God's name, they have fulfilled that commandment. And it would appear that in the rationale of this particular matter, mishum deba'oto inyan ketiv, because regarding in that very same statement that we were just quoting, I will be sanctified amongst the children of Israel. Ketiv, it also says, Ki ani Hashem mekadeschem, right? Because I, the Lord, am the one who sanctifies you, hamotzi etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Umevuar betorat kohanim sham, and there in the Sifra, in the discussion of this particular passage, it says, Almanat Cain, I in fact brought you out for that very purpose. In other words, that what this verse is trying to say is that God brought us out of the land of Egypt, redeemed us from slavery, with that very purpose of sanctifying God's name. Shetikadshu Shemi, that you should sanctify my name. So, Ulefize, and according to this, Mevo'ar Mimela. So, according to this, it becomes pretty obvious. Shebnei Noach Peturim Mizeh, that people who are not of Israelite extraction or haven't converted to Judaism, they are absolved from this particular mitzvah. V'da'a, and know, deyesh laha'ir lama nifkad chiyut b'nei Noach b'sheva mitzvot b'poslim b'zeh. And he says, and no, it's worth explaining why the obligation of the sons of Noah, of humanity, regarding these 7 mitzvot are missing. It's missing. It's not mentioned in the poskim. In other words, the people, the decisors of halacha, like the Shulchan Aruch. It's not mentioned there. It's not mentioned nowadays. Bezeh hazman, nowadays. Ki halo re'uyim ladat. Right? He says, after all, it's important, it's worth knowing the whole Bar Yisrael, for every Israelite to know about these things, shelohach lahachshilam, that we shouldn't trip up non-Jews, v'lo la'avor al lifnei iver, and so that we don't somehow take advantage of the fact that they are not aware of these 7 mitzvot. We cannot do that. There's this commandment of saying that you shall not put a stumbling block before the blind. In other words, giving them bad advice, taking advantage of their ignorance. Right? So we should be aware of these things. The siman pashut lachol ha'am, but there in fact is a clear siman, mnemonic device, right? For everyone, these kor hasheva mitzvot, in order to remember these 7 mitzvot, these 7 commandments. Hu behekdem sheshalosh. Okay, so this is in the beginning. Sheshalosh mehen hein hayoter chamorot b'Torah, because in fact 3 of them involve the 3 most important mitzvahs, the 3 most stringent of the mitzvahs. And what are those? In other words, they're saying these are the mitzvahs where if you're told to commit any one of these 3, otherwise you will be put to death, you're supposed to still avoid committing any one of these three. Avodah Zarah, idolatry, Gilu Ayarot, committing acts of sexual immorality, Ushfichut Damim, and murder. In other words, if someone says to you, unless you perform one of these three things, I'm going to kill you, we are supposed to accept the fact that we have to give up our lives and not commit any one of these three things. Yitran simunot ba'otiyot aleph, bet, gimel, and dalet. So three of them, we realize it's an easy way to remember that seven of them. First of all, that three of them involve the most important mitzvahs that we have, right? Where there are apparently no exceptions, and we're supposed to, we have to give up our lives. And the remaining four can be remembered by the letters Aleph, Bet, Gimel, and Dalet, right? The first four letters of the alphabet. And the Aleph stands for Aver Minachai, stands for Aver, there's the Aleph, right? That taking the limb of a living animal. Birkat Hashem, here Birkat Hashem, remember, means blasphemy, and there's the Bet. Gezel, there's the Gimel, theft. Dinim, there's the Dalet. And that's how we can remember all of them. And I think this is a good place for me to stop for today and make sure that I have dealt with that issue. Right. Okay. So we will start, God willing, tomorrow.
Why don't they teach that?
Good question.
Why didn't I learn this?
I know. Well, there are lots of things we didn't learn, right? I'm afraid. So, yeah.
But this one in particular, in
Yes.
terms of universality and
Right. I know. We'll have to argue with the people who set up the curriculum. Yeah. It's I think this one, these particular last two lessons that we've had dealing with the mitzvahs of sons of Noah, he's been particularly interesting and brilliant, and just the way he's able to quote from the Talmud, both the Bavli and the Yerushalmi, just his level of scholarship is just amazing. And it's such a pleasure to share this with you. Thank you.